Okay, good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order of the Wareham School Committee. It is Thursday, October 19th. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast by WCTV and audio recorded by Jamie Wixton. Would you please stand for the pledge? We'll begin with public participation. Any member of the public would like to present to the committee? Seeing none, we'll move on to good news. Would anyone like to share some good news? Okay, we have zipping right. All right, Joyce.
I sound like a broken record. I was just telling the superintendent that the unified basketball team played today, and it was a really great game to watch. And they have 2 more home games, I believe, the next 2 Thursdays. Check me on that, but I'm pretty sure. So I encourage everyone to come watch a game.
Thank you. Jeff.
So the volleyball team, which actually has a guy on it, but is going to make the playoffs. And I watched them perform really well against, Westport, which is one of their regular competitors now in the Mayflower League. And this is a team that lost some really good players when they graduated, and they have come back to be very strong this year. So kudos to them.
Great. Girls field hockey team beat Brockton the other night 3-2. That's also a good thing.
Roof project, phase 1 of the roof project, the middle school is done, 100% completed. Came in under budget. And the boiler project is this close to being done. And so we're looking good there. And that's under budget also.
So when we need heat, it will be ready?
There will be heat, yes.
Great.
Good.
Brennan.
I don't want to steal anyone's thunder, but the football team is doing great so far. I believe we've won 3 out of our 5 first games. I'd encourage the public to go out and support your team. It was always a fun time growing up, both playing and being a spectator, going to see the football games. And I know as a player, it was always better when there was a bigger crowd cheering us on. So I believe the games are still Friday night at 7 o'clock. If you can catch a JV game, go see them too. I don't know exactly when they play, but Friday nights at 7, Friday Night Lights, go out and see them. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to our student representative report. And Gisela?
Okay, starting off as usual with our clubs. Film Club just finished their first movie of the year so far and have kept up with their stellar attendance of members. Dr. Roth has just claimed that Music Mondays has been a success. Last advisory had over 15 students to come and listen and do work, a majority of them not even in music classes, while the other 15 played a song that they have been practicing. Key Club has been working on its drive for the Haitian students at our school and has extended it from clothing to toiletries and hygienic products as more needs are becoming apparent. We hope everyone who can come and support the Key Club at their car wash this Saturday from 9:30 to 1:30 at the fire station, as proceeds will be used to help our upcoming drives. Theater has been working diligently on their show, The Wizard of Oz, and will officially be working with the middle school drama department, as middle schoolers will have the opportunity to play Munchkins and Winkies, and we would also like to offer the opportunity to free tickets to all school board members to come see the show. They just had the unified basketball game, as has been talked about earlier today. And now moving away from clubs a bit. All advisories have had the opportunity to decorate their door and will continue to have the opportunity through next week. As Thursday, October 26th, there will be the Haunted Hallways, which is a completely free event for students under 12 and their families to have a safe and enjoyable Halloween experience. And now to a more academic side. The All Cape College Fair was yesterday, and around 20 students, both juniors and seniors, were able to attend. There were over 140 colleges there, and they were able to get transportation through the school. As well as there are opportunities for students to have their college essays read by English teachers during advisory this week. There were official meetings for students who were going through the pressures of having to write a personal essay and got to work on that with their fellow peers and English teachers. Bridgewater State University came today during advisory. Holy Cross University is coming tomorrow to share college information to make that process more accessible. And now to another fun announcement. Spirit Week has been this week. Today was Barbie and Ken Day. With Spirit Week, the Student Council hosts penny wars to lower the cost of prom tickets, as we know they can be incredibly expensive, and to help with other senior-based matters. In addition, they are also doing a canned food drive to help with points, so another incentive. All donations go to Damien's Food Pantry, and so far over 10 boxes of food have been filled. Tomorrow is class color day, and pep rally is Saturday. Oh, no, pep rally is also Friday. Saturday is homecoming, and as talked about before, there is an upcoming football game tomorrow afternoon. And today, as of right now, pep rallies, for pep rally decorations are in the process of being made, and the gym is currently being decorated.
Thank you, Gisela. Any questions? April?
Do they still decorate the gym with in different segments to the class colors for the pep rally?
Yes, they do.
And is there any other thing, I know in the past you guys have had games almost, or
Yeah.
things planned, or is that going to happen for the pep rally as well?
They are.
Do you know what those happen to be?
We normally have 5 games. We just had a meeting a couple weeks ago about this. But I know one of the games is going to be a game that we had last year, which was Miss Medina would call out certain items that were like supposed to be random items, and so people in each grade would try to like scramble together and find an item. Say it's a playing card or a book with a certain number in it, and so you would have to run and scramble through your whole grade to try to find it and bring it to Medina the fastest. So that's one game I know we're having.
Let's make a deal, which you don't know about, but that's what that show is.
Thank you. I hope you guys have fun.
Thank you.
Brennan?
You mentioned the canned food drive. Is there any way for the public to donate? Is there any way for us to drop it off?
I do not know. I would assume that it would be allowed, but I can email Miss Medina about that.
Joyce?
You talked about working together with the middle school for drama. Anytime the high school and the middle school can work together on anything like that, I think it's great. So I'm really happy to hear you talk about that. And the drive that you're having, how are the goods distributed?
To Damien's Food Pantry?
No, you talked about a drive for the
Yeah.
families.
So the logistics of that, Colonel Stanton is managing as he's talking to.
Sorry, I was going to say, I haven't, Colonel Stanton's working with Turning Point,
He
has
is,
been the point
okay.
organization.
Okay.
So when Giselle mentioned at the last meeting that Key Club was looking to do a drive, I reached out to Colonel Stanton because Turning Point has also been working on
Right.
that so that there wasn't a double up of issues.
Okay.
So Colonel Stanton has been working with the director of Turning Point. We just had actually a meeting about it yesterday.
Okay,
And they
great.
shifted the focus from clothing to toiletries, and that will be the Key Club will be organizing them. They will be brought to Turning Point at Viking Drive, and then Turning Point is distributing them to the migrants.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So the students won't have any interaction, as far as I'm aware.
Thank you. Jeff?
2 things. One is, I keep reading, listening to people talking about the college essay has become, primarily as a result of the Supreme Court decision, a critically important document, or at least it's perceived to be a critically important document. Are students talking about it? Is it a source of stress? Is it a source of much greater time than people were used to in the past? What's your thoughts about the college essay? And are you getting guidance from the guidance counselors about this important document?
From my point of view, I think the importance of the personal essay has been increased, and I think it's a mix of both stress, but also like we've never had an opportunity such as this. As the personal essay, there are prompts, but you can also stray away from the prompts completely and just write whatever you want. And I think a lot of students are taking the opportunity to talk about how either their financial situation, their race, or just anything out of their control has played a part in their education and also what they want to do in the future. So I think we see it both as an amazing opportunity to talk about what we're passionate about and who we are outside of solely our grades, but also a source of stress as it's a huge task with not so many words. And from a guidance counselor perspective, I have had help from my guidance counselor, and I've heard other students who have also gotten help from not only their guidance counselors, but other teachers who are not just English teachers, but are in the fields that they're looking to go into, or other teachers that they just feel supported by.
That's a great answer. Thank you. I appreciate that.
That would make a good essay.
And my second question is, I ran into a tennis player who happens to be an seventh, he just moved from 8th grade to 7th grade, history teacher. And I asked him about, given all the, we've got this Gaza-Israel stuff, which is roiling campuses, plus we've got the extraordinary dysfunction in Congress, and I said, does he touch those topics in his classes? And he literally said to me, I don't touch anything that controversial. It just doesn't pay to do that sort of thing. I was disappointed in his answer, didn't tell him so, because it seemed like I would have loved, if I was a middle school student, to be engaged on those topics. Do you find that your teachers, especially someone like a Colonel Stanton, because I know he teaches things that are current events type, do you find those topics are being talked about not only with teachers and students, but maybe students to students?
That's a really important question. I'm really glad you asked that. In my classes, I feel as though we have touched on it, mostly in Colonel Stan's class, as the class I'm in is a global politics class, so we do touch on that quite often. And I think it is an important conversation because it's so easy to detach ourselves to what's going on in the world and not realize how, speaking as Gisela, maybe not speaking as student representative, how governments can be complicit in these actions, and I think that's important information to learn. With Colonel Stanton, he has brought in a speaker to talk about this with us, and in addition, would like to bring in a second speaker so we could learn from both point of views, as it's interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Both points of view related to which issue?
To Gaza and, well, Palestine and Israel. So he has currently brought in an Israeli, not professor, but speaker to talk about it from their point of view, which obviously is going to be biased. And as I've been talking to Colonel Stanton, I have shown him other resources or talked to him about other resources that we could have to bring in another point of view. So I think it is an important conversation to have, solely speaking as Gisela, not student representative.
Got it.
I think it's something that's, in those classes, it's riling a lot of students up, and I think that's important. From the students that I've talked to, it's constantly on their mind, and I think it's an eye-opening situation. But then again, it might just be those students that I'm talking to. I'm not sure the whole population. And then for Congress, that's actually hasn't been talked about as much as what's going on in Palestine, for obvious reasons, but we have touched on it multiple times in some of my classes, which are all important case studies, which are interesting to see as they unfold, and also a bit scary. But I think it's important that we are talking about them.
I'm really glad to hear your answer. Thank you. All set.
Thank you, Gisela. All right, we have minutes of the meeting from October 5th. We have those in our packet. Did anyone have any questions or corrections?
No, motion to accept.
I'd just like to add, it mentioned you led the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to amend it that April had to remind you. Since it was in there.
Wow. Okay.
I'll let
Duly
Kevin
noted.
take it. It's fine. I don't need the credit.
In that
Do I
case,
have a,
I
do I
second
have
your
a
motion.
second with that crucial amendment?
Seconded.
Second, okay. All in favor of accepting the minutes as
Aye.
printed, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstain, 500.
Tough committee. Woo.
All right, next up, report of the Director of Finance, Kristen Flynn.
Good evening. In your packet, you have the monthly report for the month of September. I don't really have too many updates. I do have a couple of important ones, so I will get right into it. So the budget right now is about 21% expended. Some of the things that, there's two lines that I'm kind of concerned about at this point. One of them is the Wareham Elementary School electric budget. We have shown some improvement over last year, so that's good. Hopefully, as each month goes along, we'll see the same. So from the time period of July, the July invoices and through the October invoices from last year to this year were about $15,000 less, so that's good. So hopefully that will continue. We've taken that into account in building the next year's budget, so when we get into the budget for next year, you'll see some changes there. The other line item that I'm watching closely now is the out-of-district transportation. I think I've mentioned this before for special education, out-of-district, and also McKinney-Vento and Foster students. Again, these are very unpredictable lines, especially the Foster and McKinney-Vento. Just in the past, right now, we're currently transporting 6 McKinney-Vento students between New Bedford, Fall River, and Franklin, and 6 Foster students from Marshfield, New Bedford, Plymouth, Middleborough. But just this week, we got requests for cost shares for 6 additional McKinney-Vento students from Plymouth and Falmouth, and just today, perhaps from Boston. So
You're saying it doubled from 6 to 12?
yes, and so that's what's caused me concern just over the past few days. So, and these are not inexpensive expenditures. Some of these out-of-district vans that we use, we try to use our own transportation when possible, but it's a combination of drivers and vehicles. So I know that we're trying to increase both, and as we do that, we can maybe bring some of these back in. But it is quite costly. We're looking at some runs as low as $150, which is reasonable, per day, per student per day. And upwards of, we have one run that's $499 per student per day. So it runs the gamut. So when you multiply it out times the number of days, it gets quite costly. So that's something I'm going to continue to look at closely. The good news right now, perhaps, is that when we did the budget for this year, last year, we were looking at hiring some new drivers. So I kind of leveraged it between driver salaries and contract services. So it looks like we're going to be favorable with driver salaries, so that can, hopefully, that will be transferred over into the contract services. So, but again, that's something that has to be, continue to be looked at, and monitoring the driver salaries. So, it's not ideal, but at least right now there's a source of funding for it. For the special education transportation, some of that we can rely on circuit breaker for that, although, we don't like to, because we like to save circuit breaker to roll over into the next year in as much as possible. But it is there. So, we did carry over a decent balance in circuit breaker, and we were just notified last week of our this year's circuit breaker amount, which is $1,788,000 for circuit breaker for this year. So we currently have about $1,260,000 committed for tuition to charge to circuit breaker, and another $304,000 in some other special ed expenditures. So looking at that right now, going forward, our balance as of right now with those commitments would be about $723,000. But that can go fast with some of these expenditures. So that's, I just wanted to update the committee with that information. We talked about the West Electric. we're looking pretty good, like I said last month, with our tuitions, collaborative and private. And again, if we needed to do a budget transfer, that is some area that I would look to into transportation. So that's the only couple of updates I have. I don't know if anyone has any questions at this
April?
time.
So the only question that I had is, and Dr. DeAndrea alluded that you may know, how, I know we get a reimbursement from the state for McKinney-Vento, and that gets presented at town meeting to go back into the general fund, and then we have to petition town meeting to then get that budget back. Do you know how that practice got put into play where it goes back into a general fund to the town and not back into our budget directly, whereas it's getting expended out of our budget? Do you know where that started from, or what legislative decision made that happen?
Specifically, I do not. However, I can tell you that I would say probably in the recent past, maybe 5 to 6 to 7 years, that's when we started to see reimbursements for McKinney-Vento homeless transportation. And I don't know if it's something that when the Department of Revenue or whomever determines what sources of revenue belong where, that one was considered right out of the gate as a general fund, as a town revenue, perhaps because the expenditures from the school department, essentially the funding is from the town revenue. So maybe that's the line of thinking, I'm not sure, but it is a general fund revenue, and then the practice is for municipal school departments to appeal to their town at town meeting to get it appropriated back to the school committee. So right now, we're spending a lot of all these funds. So when at the end of this year, next year, I file a report, that'll allow DESE to know how much has been expended. They'll determine statewide what the reimbursement is, what the reimbursement percentage is, and then they will make a payment. The payment that we received came in probably, I want to say July or so, for last year or for the previous year. So right now it could be, it's sort of a cash problem, right? Because we're spending the money now and we won't, the earliest we can receive the reimbursement for that would probably be a year to a year and a half from now.
And I do understand and appreciate that there is a reimbursement that comes back. It just seems like it's such an unnecessary step for, and it's time consuming for you to then have to put something together, to then go back to town meeting for a budget or money that was already allocated to us, to then get reimbursed somewhere else and then have to get voted again to get it back. It just seems like an unnecessary circle. And I want to find out how and why that is, so I know who to harass and try to see how squeaky wheel I can see about finding out how that can be changed, because it seems like a lot of work for a lot of districts, and it seems unnecessary.
Right.
So I appreciate the information that you had.
And it's, there are some revenues that go straight to school departments, and there are some that go straight to the town departments and have to get appropriated to the school department.
Jeff?
So the cherry sheet is filled with things related to the schools that we never see. And we theoretically get it as a result of the negotiations that we have every year with the town as to what they're going to give us to run the schools. Unlike circuit breaker, where there's a very specific formula as it applies to reimbursement for special education costs, what percentage, and I take your point about it, it's a cash problem, but is it just a cash problem? What percentage have we been getting ultimately for our McKinney-Vento students, which is only 50% our expense, but nevertheless, it's our expense? What percentage is the town getting that we then have to beg for?
Right, I think it's varied. I think it has varied. I think one year it was around 50%, one year it was 100%. I do not think it was 100% this past year. I can double check that, but it varies. It's not as, maybe because it's a newer program, unlike Circuit Breaker. Circuit Breaker usually hovers right around 72 to 75%.
Yeah, Suzanne Bump, I think it was her, the state auditor, who actually accosted, on your behalf, April, she accosted just for us to get money back, because it was essentially an unfunded liability. So it's a good news thing that we're actually getting something. I'm chagrined to hear that literally it's been as low as 50%, and maybe it's occasionally 100%, but I guess it ultimately depends on the level of funding that is authorized through the legislature. I am surprised it wasn't 100% last year, since they were spending money hand over fist and giving money back to the taxpayers, and they still couldn't give us 100%
I'm
of
not sure. It
McKinney-Vento?
may have been. I'll
Okay,
have
bottom
to
line
check.
is, it's hard to count on it, and notwithstanding it goes to the general fund. My last question is, could you give us an example of something that goes directly to us and does not go through the general fund?
Circuit Breaker would be a good example. That comes
Okay.
directly to us. So that's every year, the Student Services Department, the Special Ed Department, they file the Circuit Breaker claim through DESE, and that it's eligible special education expenditures, and that's how we get our Circuit Breaker reimbursement. That comes directly to us without further appropriation. I think school choice comes to us without further appropriation.
That's interesting, because that's part of the cherry sheet.
Mm-hmm.
You
Right.
think, or you're sure?
I'm sure. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
I'm sure, yes.
okay. How
That
about the
comes-
title money, Title I in particular?
Oh, yes, all the grants
All
come
that
to us
grants
without
comes
without
directly
further
to
So
us.
the only one that
appropriation,
doesn't
yes.
seems to be McKinney-Vento.
McKinney-Vento.
Well, in
and
Chapter
if-
70, of course.
And if there's any, depending on how towns, cities, our school departments choose to do E-rate, some E-rate funds, if you take a credit, you can either take a credit on your bill, I believe. This is, I haven't worked with E-rate in a couple of years, so certainly Bonnie can fill us in if I'm incorrect, but sometimes you could either take a credit on an invoice for your E-rate purchases, or you would have to ask for it once a year through an appropriation at town meeting. So E-rate might be an example.
Okay,
I'm trying to think, but any
That's fine.
grants, the school nutrition funds, those come straight to us. So really, the only one I can think of any substantial amount is McKinney-Vento, and that's only, and it's based on whatever your experience is.
Right.
Some schools may not have a lot, and it's very unpredictable, because you never have the same, I don't want to say never, but you very rarely have the same group of students from year to year to predict, and they may come and go throughout the year too. So at this time last year, this may not have been an issue, but as the year went on, it may have become an issue and then, lessened, just depending on, the unpredictability of the students that are affected.
also, thank you.
Joyce?
So I guess I would just say to Jeff, and April, I understand like your frustration with the process, but I guess I would disagree with your use of the word beg, because the town is really just following the procedure, right? They're not doing anything out of the ordinary than any other.
Okay, I'll withdraw the term beg.
All right.
Jamie,
I just-
withdraw the word term beg. Okay.
And I just wanted to ask you about Circuit Breaker. So that Circuit Breaker reimbursement is quite a bit larger than it was just a few years ago. So is that a combination of things? I know that you and the Director of Student Services have worked together to work on that reimbursement application, is it because the expenses are higher, or it's being funded at a higher rate?
I think
Or all
both.
of those things?
Both,
Yeah.
I think. So the expenses are higher, and I know that Kathy and Melissa do go through with a fine tooth comb and are real experts at making sure that every cost related to the student is claimed. So they've done a good job in maximizing what they ask for. The costs have gone up, I'm sure, and also, as we have higher placements, because if you have a collaborative placement, you're barely over the foundation amount, so you're not picking up too many dollars on that. But obviously, when you have a higher cost placement, like a residential, then you're going to get a big reimbursement. And in the past few years, transportation has been allowed to be included, so that's really beefed it up as well. So, and last year, this most recent circuit breaker that we got for last year, I don't think transportation was 100% reimbursed, but I believe in a previous year it was. So, so it's all those factors to answer your question.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Brennan?
I just had a question about the electric at the Wareham Elementary School. I know last year we had a problem with it. I know it's still because it's a new building, you know, we haven't quite gotten a handle on it yet, but what are the factors that are making it go so up and down? I mean, I was hoping this year we would have like kind of a better handle on it. I mean, it was supposed to be cost effective or whatever, and it seems like it's become the biggest wild card in the whole elementary budget.
So I think we do have a better handle on it now, especially after going through 2 summers, and that's really what the difficulty was with balancing the humidity and the outside air and the inside air. And it was effectively had to run the heat and the air at the same time over the summer to control the humidity level. So I know that Eric and Robbie have gotten a lot through experience and hard work and just troubleshooting. They've really, by the end of the summer, they had, found the right balance of the temperature controls and the comfort level of the staff. So I think that has gotten better, and now that we know that last summer wasn't, say, 2 summers ago, I should say, wasn't an aberration, that's how we have to manage the summer. Now, going forward, we can budget better for it. So we bumped up the budget quite a bit last year for this year, and we're gonna bump it up again for next year. And then I think finally, having had the benefit of now 1 full year for, not only for the facility side, for the budgeting side for that building, together, hopefully we won't be talking about this next year, so.
So we've identified the kind of the root cause of it.
Yes.
There's not anything else wild
No,
going
no,
on.
no,
that,
no.
heating this winter isn't going to make us scratch our heads again and go, what were we doing?
No, and I don't think, the heating is not so much the problem as the cooling. That's what really, gave us a problem.
We had a very mild winter last year too, so I mean, I know that threw everything off. Mother Nature,
We're hoping,
Yeah, exactly.
we're hoping.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Kristen.
You're welcome.
All right, we have an obsolete technology vote. We have the list of obsolete IT equipment in our packets. April?
Wait till she presents and then I'll ask my question.
I wasn't going to present them because you have it, so you are welcome to ask.
Okay, so it's a question I know that I've asked before when it comes to when we have technology, specifically iPads and phones and Chromebooks and things. And I know that for our purposes in the life of upgradable operating systems and updates and things like that, I understand that they become obsolete for us for for security reasons.
Right.
However, I know that when we deem things obsolete at our level, it then goes to, if it's able to be sold, it's sold, and if not, it's, recycled in some capacity, whether it's furniture, technology. I've asked, I think, every time for technology that it's been planted, like if there is a number of what we are able, or any history of anything recouped expense-wise for any technologies, and that's all. I just would like to have a number for that.
Let's see, this is my 3rd year. So 2 years ago, we received a $285 credit through a company, and the credit went to CDW, which is, we purchase technology from, and I think we bought a printer with that. So last year it changed. So that year we got more back because we had so much. I don't think there had been anything marked obsolete in the last 20 years. trailers full of equipment that they took away, literally the trailer at Deacon's that they emptied out. So last year when we did it, we had far less, and this year we actually even have less. So what's happening now, and I'll talk about it in a minute, but they've extended the lifespan of, Google has extended the lifespan of Chromebooks, which is great. So it used to be 4 years. Now it's 8 years, and it's going to be 10 years for new, so that it's, and they're gonna wear out before we get to 10 years. There's no way they'll last that long. So what we have this year are parts.
Okay.
So if the screen is not broken, the guys pull it out. If the keyboard still, all the keys are on it, they pull it out. So because we repair in-house, really what is going to any recycling company are pieces parts. The other thing that happened is the program we used the first year, which I thought was going to be amazing because they were going to take them, recycle them, and then bring them back to Wareham and offer them to the public, and it folded. And so did one other company that was going to do the same. I think they're having an issue with Google as far as getting all that worked out. Now the company that we've used the last 2 years, they've begun charging us to pick it up, which is sort of fair because it's a lot. And then the things that they would have given us in cash or in a credit, they're putting towards what it costs to pick it up. So this year we might, because of the change to Zoom phones, we have some iPhones that actually do have value, substantial value, so we may possibly make some money, but I don't think it's going to be very much. They don't pay for Chromebooks anymore. They pay for MacBooks, laptops, anything Apple that's usable, iPhone or phones and laptops.
Okay, thank you.
Do I have a motion to accept the obsolete equipment list?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? 500. All right. Report of the Director of Technology. Bonnie, take it away.
Okay. So this is the third year that we are presenting it. We are basing this on, it's based on one of the parts of the strategic plan that was started in let me get to the right place. There you go. Started in 2021. It's a 5-year plan. I realized last year that I did not introduce the people who work in my department. I did invite them. They declined. I know, next year. So I'm Bonnie LaSorsa, Director of Technology. Our network manager is Phil Robinson. Our data systems coordinator is Robin Westberg. We did promote Jimmy Cannon this year to lead IT specialist, and he handles the middle school and central office. And then Tim Connolly is at the high school, and he also works for the night school. And then we have 2 IT specialists at the elementary school, Dave McCrae, who also teaches night school, and Carl Saborn. And one of the things I realized when I was doing this is that really Robin and I didn't grow up around here, are not Wareham grads, but it's a lot of Wareham alumni there. So Jimmy, Tim, Carl all graduated from Wareham High School, and Phil's wife graduated from Wareham High School. And I think that's pretty cool. So
Well, maybe we need to highlight them on our alumni page.
I might have suggested that. Yes. I also volunteered Phil's wife, and she's not very happy with me, so. So I've sort of divided this into some sections, and I'm going to talk about what we've done this year and what our plans are going forward. Cybersecurity and privacy have become 2 of the probably the most important things that we do. We do cybersecurity training through a grant with the town. They do 2 assignments, an assessment, 2 assignments in the spring, and then 2 assignments and a post-assessment in the fall. And then they do some phishing campaigns, which make people very upset when they fall for them because they assign extra work. So we're in the process of doing that. We are going to continue to do that, which doesn't make people happy. But I will say it's been effective. I got, I think, a message went out this morning to all families and staff, and I immediately got 5 messages that said, is this okay to open? And that's a huge change from what it used to be. The second one that is very important is student data privacy. We joined a group called TECH. So when I first started, there's Student Data Privacy Consortium is a national organization that works with vendors and with school districts and to sign legal agreements. And so the first time I thought, oh, I can do this, we joined the group. It's pages and pages of contract language that we would have to have an attorney involved with. So we joined a group called TECH, and TECH facilitates that for us. And so we're able to look at agreements that they signed in Bourne and sort of tailgate behind them, and that's how the whole program works. So in the last 2 weeks, Google has changed the way they work with allowing people to sign on. So I'm sure you've done it where you go to a website and you sign on with Google, especially if you have a personal Gmail account. Amazon's one of them. Many companies do that. So Google has changed their regulations. If you are under 18 years old, basically you either have to have a student data privacy agreement or parental consent from every parent of a student that might possibly access that, which is basically impossible to get. So currently, this says 75 signed agreements for programs. In the last week I blocked them. We have over 892 different websites, programs that people in our district are trying to access using Google. You have to go through every single one of them and either allow them or block them, and for different age groups. So in the midst of doing that, we currently have closer to 95 signed agreements with companies. So any program that a teacher uses where you give credentials, you are signing on to their site, you're giving them any personal information, you have to have a data privacy agreement in order for that to be used in the schools. So every day I keep getting more and more and more, and we're going through and checking them. There are some unhappy people about that, I have to say. I did link an article up there, if that helps. I also have copies of it. If you didn't get a chance to read it, I brought some with me as well. System security. So all school-based staff have been trained in password protocols. Phil and I went to all staff meetings and talked about good passwords and changing it. I'm going to talk about some of that in a minute with him. We use Google Education Plus, and we do pay for it. It's $2,000. It reduces 95% of all the phishing attacks, which is when somebody sends you an email and wants you to click on it, and then it puts a packet on your computer, physically puts it on your computer. And at a seminar I sat in yesterday, where they highlighted 2 Massachusetts school districts that were ransomware attacks, in one of them, that packet sat there for 18 months and slowly worked its way through the district to get the information they're looking for. They're looking for the superintendent's logins. They're looking for, in particular, payroll. And then Robin Westberg, who manages our Power School, is probably the next most important person because of all that information. So they're trying to get those, and it sits and waits. And then there's a timer when it goes off. That's when they lock your district. And the implications of that were terrifying. Both districts paid $1.5 million. One had insurance and one did not. Both of them ended up paying $1.5 million. So it's terrifying. And 4 months of downtime. No internet, no computers, no Chromebooks, no payroll, no Power School. It's a terrifying thing to think about. So So these are from Phil. So implemented a policy of least privilege. So one of the things that's happened since he's been here is Jimmy and I have looked at every single system that we have and gone through them. So a policy of least privilege means that if you have rights to something, you have rights that would get you through about 99% of the time. And we look at it in our systems, we look at it in our background, we look at it in Power School. It used to be that everyone had access to everything, and he has really dialed that back. So he's going to give people less. I don't have Wi-Fi passwords. I have admin privileges, like to install software, but I don't know it. And we all have 2 accounts. We're all Muppets. I'm the Count, imagine that. Phil is Kermit. So it's not mine. So when I log in every day as myself, I don't have admin privileges, neither does he. You have to log in with a separate login. And honestly, the password is like 47 characters. Zero trust means just that. We're always going to default to thinking that whatever that website is or that program is, that we don't trust them first because of what is at stake. And then the cyber border. So for example, every school in the district has different IP addresses. And in the past, they were just all over the place. And now it's a very narrow set of standards. So when we look at where someone logged in, we can tell almost to the exact site what room they were sitting in to log in. And those kinds of systems, the availability to look at that didn't exist before the last couple of years. Our wireless network, so this fall, we, at the high school's request, the guest network is not on during the school day. So it comes on, I think, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. There's a couple of reasons for that. One was because, one was cell phones access during the school day. The other was really people using devices that don't belong to the district. If they don't belong to the district, we can't manage them. So there are 3 levels of networks. Internal network is any device that is owned by the district. And there is a password for it, but it's by a QR code. If you come into the building, you just scan the QR code. And that's how you would be on the staff network. So there's the internal network, which is something that we manage those devices. There's a staff network for staff devices, and then there's a guest network. Last year, Indiana asked about students who bring their own devices. So we did run a trial to see how that would work. There were some issues. So the only students who use their own devices are Bridgewater State students because of some class mandates for the whole. And that's Phil's decision and Mr. Palladino's. That's a joint conversation. Physical security, we did implement, and we have trained on Navigate 360, which is an alert, response, and reunification program, which is ongoing. We continue to maintain and administer both the ACM, which is our access control system, and the ACC, which are the cameras at the schools. The ability to look at the cameras on a mobile device for certain members of public safety, at the police department, all of those things are now available, as well as we've worked a lot with the police and fire departments as far as access control, being able to get in and out of the buildings and when and how. We did switch to Zoom phones. One of the things about Zoom phones is that it made us E91 compliant, which means that if I don't have a desk phone any longer, so my work phone number rings on my personal cell phone on the Zoom app. That's my choice to put it there. It also rings on my laptop. as I walk through buildings, it knows where I am, because and that goes back to setting up the access points, so it knows which access point I'm connecting to. So if I made a 911 call, they would know where I was in the building, which we've never had, and we were out of compliance, but grandfathered in because of the systems we had. So we are waiting for the school violence grant. It's $500,000, and I was really hoping I could tell you tonight that we got it, but I don't know yet. We did, from that grant, based off of that grant, wrote with Dr. Schwam the Emergency Management Operations Planning Grant through DESI, which we received, and then we wrote a grant for the high school to create a committee to look at cell phone policy. And we got that one as well.
April has a question?
Yep, just going back to the Zoom phone and the access to the wireless networks. Say that there was a power outage or widespread townwide power outage, things of that nature. How would that be impacted now that the phones are reliant on a wireless access point, as opposed to picking up a corded in the wall, old school phone to call for help?
So everyone, I gave mine away, everyone else has a desk phone. Like, we did replace desk phones as well. The difference is that these run off the internet. Even the desk phones run off the internet. So if there was a power outage, our old phone system would also have died, because it's not a direct line in. If there was a power outage, what we had would not have worked either. If our internet went down, and we do have 2 different internet connections, so if one Comcast failed, we also have a Verizon one that's not as robust, but we do have a backup. But because you can choose to put the Zoom app on your phone, your personal cell phone, your data plan applies. So my phone, because it's on my personal cell phone, would work anyway. It's not reliant on the wireless network if I had a data plan.
And which I understand, but you said you're the only, or one of few that possibly have it on their phone. So if you weren't, say you weren't in the building that day, right? You were on vacation, took a personal day, and there was an outage. I'm just I'm all for the state, but, having an old school backup plan where I think people who are looking to do these cyber attacks, they have been targeting power because they know that cameras, all of that stuff it doesn't run without electricity. So I just want to know that we have an extra safeguard in place for any instance where that's not available.
So anyone who has, every staff member, not the elementary school, we haven't, because they're still in a contract with Metropolitan, middle school, high school, central office, everyone has the option to put the app on their phone. It's not just me. Anyone can have that. They also have desk phones. I just don't have a desk phone because I gave mine to someone else. The old system wouldn't have worked, so we haven't changed that. If there had been a major power outage in the past with the system we had, it wouldn't have called out, because it relies on, and I'm going to talk in a minute, because we've also made some improvements to power backups and power electricity. So that's sort of a wash, because it wouldn't have worked either. So we gained a little bit in the fact that it could work with a data plan, like I said, if you choose to put it on it. So teachers didn't lose anything. They gained the ability to answer a work. So in all fairness, as a teacher, there were several parents that had my personal cell phone, because I knew I needed to talk to them. I only had this much time during the day. They worked. I couldn't do it, so I gave them my personal cell phone. That is a horrible, terrible, really bad idea. It really is just not, it's a safety issue, among other things. And there were some parents I texted with because it was the only way. Again, not the smartest thing to do, and we don't want, and I did not realize the implications of what that meant when I was using my personal cell phone if something had happened. So now Zoom also allows you to send texts, so they can text parents. They can text out of hours if they choose from their laptop, any place they have wireless or data. So it's on everyone's laptop, it's on everyone's desk phone, and if they choose to put it, they can put it on their cell phone. And we're just moving into that.
So, and I get that point, but I remember when I was working at the middle school and even, attending things at the high school, there's no signal for your data. Like, it's a
Right.
fortress, right? You don't get signal in these buildings if you are on your data. So Wi-Fi becomes necessary in a lot of those instances. I think what I'm more asking is, like, if the systems are down, whether you said it's the old systems or not, is there like one room in the entire building that would have an old school hardwired phone to be able to get 911 calls? Like, in an extreme, like, Armageddon situation where towers are down, there's nothing to do but an old school underground, unless they're on a pole, we have no way to communicate with the outside world.
So because of the kind of phone system we had, those don't actually work. There is, in the basement, in the DMARC room, which is where the phone lines come into the middle school, there is a old-time phone there. Most people don't even know where the basement is, so. The elevator systems run on analog lines. They have not converted over yet. The alarm system was just at the middle school because we are in the process of converting some of those over. And he said that all the new alarm systems, which ours is not, at the middle school, run on cellular data. And I even said that, I'm like, but we don't get great service here. And he said, that's still the way it goes. So they're making those. The panic button is not connected through Zoom phones. It's not connected through the internet directly.
So there are panic buttons, so, okay.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
That's like,
so-
so there is a way to signal for help should a phone system not have power. So that answers, that's,
I mean, worst comes to worst, if the power totally goes out, then we lose almost everything in the system. There are backup, there are 2 internet connections in every building, like I said, both Comcast and Verizon, if one was to go out. The other thing that I talked about just a moment ago was Navigate 360, which is a security app. Again, it's on, you can put it on your laptop, you can put it on your cell phone, and all of our first responders are part of that. So if anyone starts an emergency, it immediately signals all of our first responders. Now, that is based on data, so you might have to go outside if that, but believe it or not, it's gotten better at the middle school, depending on who you have for a carrier.
thank you.
Bonnie, I just want to give you a gentle reminder that you have 12 more slides left.
I know.
That first slide took 20 minutes.
I know.
So we're going to have to hit the major points and then
okay.
have questions.
Just a quick question. You mentioned the possibility of getting a $500,000 grant. What specifically or roughly would that money go towards?
It all goes to public safety projects, access control. We had written the Zoom phones into it, cameras for the buses, and then some other programs. It's all part of the Public Safety Committee.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, I'll go quick. I've talked about some of these as far as things going further this year. Multi-factor authentication is coming. That's where you have to like check a code or something in order to get in. That second one. We're still working on data privacy, but I talked about those. Professional development, worked with Dr. Schwam as far as the professional development that she talks about. We do have tech tips. We had a whole long conversation about everything you need to know about chargers and the different kinds. Chromebook care, Google Helps and Hints. The high school last year, the elementary school started doing NUIA testing. And then this year, it started at the high school, and so I've been working with them, with teachers, as far as how to use that data once they get it. The website, and then some other professional development. We started last year with Droplet. Droplet allows us to create our own forms. Course approval, reimbursement, and salary advancement are in place. Mandated training, all of our users at the beginning of the school year did it that way. Field trip requests are the new ones. And then we're still working on onboarding, which is the whole process of recommendation of new hire. And I thought I had a pretty good system until I went to the admin meeting this morning, and so I don't have a really good system, so we're gonna go back and revise that. They create them for us, the forms, the way we want them, and then they route them, so there will be less paper going from place to place. Smart Find Express is our new absence management system, and we switched from Frontline for a couple reasons. The first was we save about $13,000 a year on the program, and the second is that Smart Find Express, which is owned by Power School, has done the programming to automatically do the accruals for vacation, sick, and personal days based upon your job description and what you do. Jamie Wixton has been amazing at helping with that. So they've done the logic, and we're just about complete with that, so it's automatic. It will also eventually allow subs to call in and place subs. Phone systems, that's what I was talking about. We had written it into that grant. The end of last school year, the phone system at the high school was just about gone. There was almost half the school that did not have working phones in their classrooms. So we decided to escalate the process, and we put Zoom in over the summer. We did save about $20,000 because Phil and I did it together. I have a few more gray hairs because of it. As a way of handling it, he's been amazing. It is completely implemented with the exception of faxes, paging, and we're working on the transportation office. That one's a little bit different because that building's actually owned by the town, so there's some other issues there. The high school needs to be recabled. We learned in the midst of that there are not enough network jacks in each room at the high school, and some rooms didn't have any. Our facilities department helped and did some of the cabling, but I would like to have someone come in and actually pull new cables in the high school and sort of retrofit it for what we're looking at for technology now. The quote I got was about $100,000, but I think I can use E-rate money for that, I'm hoping. So, and we're working still with the emergency, the E911. Coming in the future, all the forms that you see on the website in that list, there's 40 of them or something, we want to move over into Droplet. So that all of our forms go into one place and are stored there. And then we're still waiting on the phone systems. We just have a few others. So the other thing that I've been working on in the last almost 3 years was really thinking about streamlining and integrating our programs. So we, like I said, we have 800 something programs that people are trying to log into, and we want them all to work together and make it automatic. So almost all of our major programs now are rostered through Clever. So it goes from Power School to Clever and from Clever to whatever it is. So there's a new ELA program at the high school, there's a new math program at the high school, and when they log in, their classes are set up for them. They don't have to do anything, it's automatic. If a student changes a class in Power School, it changes them in those programs. And so we're continuing to work on making that smoother. We are moving our programs internally to Google Sign-On because the fewer passwords that people have, the less likely they are to be written on Post-it notes or note cards. So we're working on that as well. Technology forms, so we've changed the way we've done this. Now, I'll talk about that in a minute. Our goal is that every student, when they go into a building, gets a new Chromebook eventually. So kindergarten or first grade, depending, 5th grade and 9th grade. And I know 8th graders at the high school, but, and so every 4 years, they would get a new Chromebook, and they would keep that Chromebook for those 4 years. Technology forms would only have to be signed when they walk in. So they sign them as an 8th grader or a 9th grader, and it's in effect until they leave the high school, whenever they leave the high school. Collecting Chromebooks and handing them out takes an inordinate amount of time and organization. So especially at the high school, students are not starting the school year with a Chromebook in front of them. So last year, we started allowing them to take them home for the summer. Actually, this is the second year. We had less damage letting them take them home than we did. So it's been a great program, and we're hoping to convince the middle school principal to let us do that as well. It just makes it easier at the beginning of the school year. We switched our website, and we switched who archives both our social media and our website with fairly substantial savings. And then going forward, I actually talked to public relations liaisons in all 3 schools. So as of today, they have access to the website to maintain their own page. And I'm very excited about that as a teacher, because I think that's where it belongs, is in the hands of the school. So there's one person at each school that can make changes to the websites, and they can add things to the event calendars. There's a few more people there. So the website's up and running. One of our goals is we actually have 3 systems for the card scanners and for the cameras, and we would like to integrate them. And then this year, we're looking at reviewing some other programs, GoGuardian, which is our monitoring and filtering, FileWave, and our backup systems. And always endpoint security. These are things that we've done as far as the background, the infrastructure. There's new firewalls. There's also new UPS backups in each building. So prior to now, if there was a power surge, the network would go down, the wireless network would go down, it would take 5 to 10 minutes to come back up. We now have 15 minutes in every building on every server, and the way he has it built, those quick blips would never take it that long to go down and back up. We have air conditioners installed in both the MDF room and the IT room at the high school, which was important because the MDF room, which is where all the servers were in the summers, was over 85 degrees, and they had to leave the door open for ventilation, which is just, that's your whole network in one closet. The cloud systems, we put an antenna on to connect the Boys and Girls Club facilities and fields and grounds to our network so that they can have access to it as well. And then, like I said, we've restructured. They redid the gaming lab at the high school. There were some issues there last year. The video production room at the elementary school is set up. The audio-visual systems at the elementary school are almost complete, which would then allow us to finish the gym. If you have questions about that. This is how he tracks things. This is server uptime. We haven't had a Wi-Fi outage in 2 years. So PaperCut is the program where when you go to print something, instead of saying, I'm going to print it to this copier, you print it, and then when you go to a copier, you scan your ID badge, and it prints it right away. We had it a few years ago, and it went away. It's coming back for a couple of reasons. One, if you go to this printer and someone's copying 400 copies of something, you don't need to wait. You can go someplace else. If this one's down, you can go over here. It's also like with IEPs or anything that has personal information, when you go to print it, you don't want it to be sitting there. You want it to print when the person walks up. So that's coming. That'll be starting next month. We're beginning to look at replacement of staff devices. The AutoCAD lab at the high school is in need of some help. And then right now there's a 10 gig fiber that connects the middle school and the high school. And we would really like there to be one that went from the middle school, which is really the hub of the entire network, over to the elementary school. In the last week, we've found out that the town, because of the fire stations, I believe, is actually having some cabling run, and we may be able to take part of that. Otherwise, that would be a good E-rate project. And so we're looking at getting some quotes for that. Devices. So currently, we are K to 12. All students have assigned Chromebooks. The problem with that is that almost all the Chromebooks, almost all of the laptops, and all of the touch views, the big TV monitor screens in the classrooms, were purchased at the same time with ESSER funds. And so they're all going to wear out and need to be replaced. We were going to have to replace them in 2024, 26, and 27 because that was that auto expiration date for Google. Google has expanded that the lifetime of our Chromebooks, so we can keep them longer. That just means they get security updates. So when I start looking at it, we have to have a plan to do that. Currently we have about 2,100 Chromebooks in use for our students. Very few iPads any longer, in some special ed, some separate classrooms, individual students, and speech and language classes, OT. But the majority of student devices are Chromebooks. So now we're going to run into these problems in 2027, 2029, and 2031 are when they really begin to expire. So in 2027, we have 850 of them expiring. 2029, a little over 1,100, and then right now, 2031 is only 76, but it'll be more as we purchase some more. So I've been trying to get a plan for what it looks like to be able to budget that. So I've worked with Kristen. We talked to, I didn't mean to do that. We talked to some financing companies. Does it make sense to lease them? Does it, how can we make it so that as I look at my budget, it's a relatively consistent number? And the same thing is true with the teacher laptops. They were purchased, this is our third year of use. Industry standard for a laptop is 3 to 5 years. We haven't had very many fail yet, and they're still under warranty, so we just get them replaced. But it's coming in the next few years, and it's one of my concerns. So I have some plans. I'd actually like to go back to Chromebooks for teachers. These are not the same Chromebooks as the students get. They're very high-end. They look like a MacBook, actually, but it's almost half the cost. So those are the challenges going forward. I tried to go faster. You did. Okay.
I appreciate that.
Talk fast.
Almost Kevin's bedtime.
No, it's just saying, but if
Yeah,
you're looking at the
yeah.
plan going forward, do you think leasing makes more sense right now? The jury's still out on that.
Well, so when we first began to talk to two different leasing companies, it made sense when Chromebooks were lasting for 4 years. In the midst of getting those numbers, they've extended that time. So the sort of the sweet spot in that is that we would turn them in every 3 years and get new ones. That's sort of, because then they could resell them. That was sort of the best. But now that they've extended that date, the last time I talked to him, he's like, they haven't quite figured out what to do that. Because honestly, a child's Chromebook is not going to last 8 years. It's still going to last about 4 years. So if you lease them, then you're replacing all of them every 3 years. Whereas now, all of the IT specialists in the schools are pretty good about fixing them and using, so we're trying to, now we have to go back and look at it again.
And a
To structure
Chromebook
that.
is approximately how much a piece right now?
I just bought some for 200, but between 2 and 300, 250 is what I budgeted for.
Thank you. Brennan?
I'm just curious, I mean, it says that all students, K through 12 have Chromebooks. Would it be possible for us to get maybe a cheaper device for the younger I mean, I can't imagine that kindergartners, maybe I'm showing my age here, but kindergartners can do as much with a Chromebook as perhaps like a high school student. Is it possible for us to save money there? I mean, how much of a Chromebook does a kindergartner really need?
Good point, but you'd be amazed at what they can do with it. They
You're
don't use them
absolutely
as
correct.
much, but it's actually sort of the other way around, because initially, what we wanted to get for the younger children are iPads, and they're more expensive and more difficult to deal with Apple.
Yeah.
The new iPads, the new Chromebooks are touchscreen, which takes some of that, makes it easier for them. They still use them. All of the testing is on them. All their NUIA testing is on them. They just don't use them as much, if that makes sense. So they're still using Chromebooks, and they still use them. They still have games on them, and they do great. It's amazing to watch them. They're not using them as much time-wise as some of the older grades, and definitely not when you get to the high school. So if you can find a less expensive device, that would be awesome.
I mean,
We
that's
haven't
what-
found one.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm wondering, is
Yeah.
if, maybe, again, because we're buying in bulk to cover everyone, it's more cost-effective to buy, maybe a more advanced device than a kindergartner needs, but we're doing it so that we can provide the best possible device for, our high school and middle school and even upper elementary students. And I also admit that I know that, a third and fourth grader probably knows way more about how to use their Chromebook than I do now.
It is quite amazing what they know, yes.
Other questions? Joyce?
So you talked about new phones in the high school, and I know they have new phones at central office. We got a display the other day with Matt's new phone system in his office. So is that throughout the whole middle school also? And it's all the same system? But then you talked about, well, we can't do it at the elementary school yet, but the elementary school is not even quite, 2 years? So I'm assuming that equipment is still, maybe not, obviously not the same, but it's still not.
Absolutely, no, absolutely
In
not.
need of
Absolutely
replacement
not.
yet, right,
No.
okay. Not just because they're still under contract,
No.
okay.
So what they have at the elementary school is much more similar to what we have now at the middle and high school. And we looked at replacing the systems with what we have. Actually, we talked to the same people to replace the middle and high school with what we have at the elementary school. And we talked to a bunch of companies in a bunch of different ways to do it. At the elementary school, there is a device in the building, but it still runs off the internet. What's at the elementary? There are no copper or fiber phone lines going into the elementary school.
But the elementary school has a generator,
Yes,
so that would never be
Right.
an issue there.
right. So we can take what they already have and move them onto the Zoom system at the appropriate time.
Okay.
What they're missing is, now, it used to be there was one phone system at the middle school, one phone system for central office, and a different phone system for the high school. And each of them have different logins, different systems, and you couldn't call between them for the most part. They made some tricks. Now it is all one system. So if you can text, you can go from extension to extension through all of these buildings. So it's all one system. We would like the elementary school to be part of that too, so they could just all be together. But not until it's the right time to do that.
Okay. One more quick question. You said something about the gym at the elementary school. Is that the screen in the elementary school? Is that not being used
So-
right now?
the audio visual, the projector and everything in the cafetorium has been one of the last things to get signed off on from the construction. And we are almost there. They can't put, everything's in the so what's in the gym, the big screen and the projector, is not connected because they can't connect that until we sign off on what's in the cafetorium, because they need some code.
Okay.
And so we're almost there.
Who's they?
Ockers. It's the
Oh,
company.
oh,
We've been
okay.
working with the company to get them to
And this is the company that installed it during the construction? Okay.
we're almost there. I mean, we're much closer in the last, we're almost there.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Jeff?
So I like to look at things at 100,000 feet, big picture. And the big picture for me, when it comes to technology, is disturbing for the following reasons. This is nothing to do with Wareham specifically. The country as a whole is struggling with public education, much more so than 50 or 60 years ago. I'm not going to get into the why. This is not going to be a conversation about the why. What I just stated is a fact. It's struggling. Everywhere I go, I see screens. Children, young children, paying no attention in a restaurant to the people around them. They're on a screen. We're told that these screens are addictive and they're actually hurting our kids. We're even told that human existence is potentially threatened by technology. Whether you believe that or not, we're told that there's the potential for a threat to human existence. We're told, just today, New York Times op-ed, productivity, and I was reminded of that as I drove back from Boston this afternoon. It's taking a lot longer to do things today, which is one of the measures of productivity, than 50 years ago. I'm trying to see the cost-benefit analysis that's favorable to technology. We're in the business of transferring knowledge, and we're not doing a great job of it, and we're spending more and using more technology, spending more on technology and using more technology than ever. And if I was starting a school from scratch, even with all the regulations we've got, okay, I'd start with Dr. DeAndrea, certainly, if I was starting with a school district, okay? And I'd start hiring educators, right? And at what point, and you have buildings, so you need them kept clean, and you have all sorts of, by the way, we haven't exactly become a paperless society. Not even close, right? So the need for administrative support personnel is still very much there for a whole lot of reasons which we don't need to talk about. At what point do you hire these highly capable people in your department who are both highly capable, doing a great job, but they're really expensive? They're part of a budget that is constantly being asked to prioritize because we can't afford what we're doing. And I know that because Joyce and I, and before Joyce, Kevin, is on the budget subcommittee, and all we do is talk about what to cut. So since we're not doing a great job of educating kids, as compared to before technology, where maybe we were doing a better job, okay? It's costing a whole lot. We could get a bill for $1.5 million if we stumble with our network security at any time, and 2 school districts have paid it. And of course, we've got the threat to human existence, but let's put that aside, okay? How do you, and by the way, when you were a child, I was using VisiCalc to do inventory in a healthcare facility. So I'm a believer in technology, and I am never had a problem of spending money on it personally and using it, et cetera, et cetera. But we're talking about a public school system that is, it seems to me, it's more vulnerable as a result of technology, more fragile. We're spending very valuable dollars on it. When I audit a classroom, I see kids glued to their Chromebooks more than to their teacher's face. I'm really struggling with technology and its role in public education.
Well, as a technology teacher, and by degree, the definition of technology is not something with electronics. A pencil is technology. It's a tool.
So we can replace your department with a lot more pencils?
Absolutely did not say that.
Just checking.
Absolutely did not say that. But what I will say is that at some point, somebody, someplace, way back when, didn't like pencils, right? It's a tool. And I think that
It's an expensive tool.
maybe,
Not maybe.
no, it's a tool. And frankly, if we did not give our students, if we did not teach our students how to use technology, and personally, from my background, and this is me personally, not as the physician, right? I think we should be doing more technology education and computer science. But that's my background, and I've always believed that. But if you are not teaching our children to come out of high school able to do this and to be able to compete where they are choosing to compete, to write those personal essays, it doesn't change how they write. What they wrote, whether it's on a piece of paper or on a Chromebook, the words are probably not radically
Are
different.
you suggesting they need this technology
Absolutely.
let me finish my sentence. Are you suggesting they need, I got a great answer on 2 different subjects, okay, from Gisela. But I believe that that great answer was the result of her brain, not the result of the fact that she happens to have a Chromebook.
I'm absolutely not. I absolutely agree with you.
Well,
Absolutely agree with you. But if she didn't know how to use the technology and she went on to wherever you want to go, she would be that's not equitable. That's not helping our children. If she didn't have the ability to do it, I hope she can do it both ways. As a math teacher, right? Somebody asked me, what's the best technology you ever did? And my answer would always be when I painted my desks with whiteboard paint, because then my kids wanted to do their math problems on the table. That was the best piece of technology I ever employed in my math class, ever, because it forced them to show their work.
You're making my point.
I'm not making your point.
Oh, yes, you're doing a
Because-
great job of it.
No.
well, look,
Brennan, your question?
I'm sorry, just to jump in on this, you can't apply at McDonald's today without going online. I mean, the use of, if Gisela, for example, was the most masterful user of pen and paper ever, it would not help her in today's job market, because again, you can't apply for the most basic minimum wage job without internet skills, being able to look up and fill it out. If I'm understanding your point, maybe I'm taking.
No, you're not. The problem is that, yes, we've created a society that requires the use of technology to do so many things. But you can't live on a McDonald's salary.
have to be far more educated and productive than what McDonald's requires. And by the way, just FYI, McDonald's is trying to automate as much as possible so that they need fewer human beings because of the cost of human beings. Putting that aside, the point is, our job is to educate the mind, and if technology has become sort of the rationale in itself, you know, you have to have it because there's technology everywhere, and we end up graduating people who are not ready to be productive people earning a middle-class lifestyle or more, then who cares if they know how to operate a Chromebook and apply for a McDonald's job online?
Right, but you're making an either-or kind of fallacy there. It doesn't have to be either-or, it can be both
Except
and.
that right now, that's what's happening. Right now, we are graduating, then I will shut up. We are graduating kids insufficiently prepared for college, the workforce, et cetera, and yet they're really good at technology. And I don't like that fact. And I will shut up.
April?
So having grown up in that cusp between your generation and Gisella's generation, where we had computers that were the size of a room, starting off, when they were much more expensive. When I started my retail career working for Best Buy, where a desktop computer was $3,000 and very few families could afford to have one, to now the affordability of a Chromebook as accessibility. And as Gisella had mentioned, having access to information and other points of views and worldviews that students in our generation would have never had the opportunity to know what was going on in Palestine and Gaza and have those kinds of conversations to give them that broader worldview. Technology made that possible. But the other thing there too, there is a double-edged sword with anything.
Walter Cronkite would have told her all about it.
Someone could have read a book that has, you know, people are bringing up all kinds of controversies and issues with what people are reading in that old school tech. There's going to be some sort of controversy, no matter what it is, when people look for it. But a textbook in college is upwards sometimes of $500. It's cheaper to get a Chromebook or a used laptop and have that access to the same information they'd get from a $500 textbook, and they have it at their hands. And a lot of
Do you know the publishers are still charging?
Oh, of course they are.
Whether it's a book or on a laptop, they're getting their pound of flesh.
Of course they are, because at the end of the day, it's not necessarily that we're making these kids ill-prepared for the world. They would have been ill-prepared for the world we grew up to be entered into, but it's making them prepared for the world that they are being entered into, because that's their reality now and that's their future, and ours was very different at that time.
So I think we're going down a very philosophical road here, and there's nothing wrong with that, except at this point, we had the report of the Director of Technology. It's up to the school committee when you embrace your philosophies through your budget, and you can decide at that point, what do we want to focus on, what do we not want to focus on, what's important, what's prioritized, what isn't. And I think our budget should reflect that philosophy, and that's going to be an argument for another day. So I'd like to end this agenda item right here with everybody's permission. And thank you very much, Bonnie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And move on to the superintendent's newsletter.
All right, thank you. You have my newsletter, and I ask first that you approve the bill and payroll warrants listed.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? 500.
Okay, very exciting. We received a very, very generous gift from William C. Deaconess, who passed away in June, last June, June 3rd. Left $100,000 to be used for enhancements to the facilities and/or educational program to the town's elementary school located at Minot Ave in memory of Georgia C. Deaconess and Charles J. Deaconess. So thank you for that very generous gift, and I ask that the school committee accept it.
So moved.
Second.
Can I,
Go right ahead.
It's a little unclear exactly what it's supposed to be used for.
Right, it only says that it is, is for enhancements to the facilities and/or educational programs. So that's the guidance that we've been given, and I thought that perhaps Bethany and I would work with the budget subcommittee, and, you know, with the budgets being so tight, this is a good amount of money that perhaps there's some one-time purchases that we'll be making that this will help us with.
Thank you.
So we have a motion and a second to accept this very generous gift from the Deacon family. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 500.
Thank you,
very
thank you.
much.
Thank you. You also had in your packet the enrollment numbers from each of the schools. Just a quick overview. 934 students at our elementary school. Average class size is about 20. I also asked the principals to include any new students from the 2 homeless shelters, just for your information. As you can see, we've received 11 students at the elementary school. The middle school, we have 406 students, average class size of just about 18. We received 2 students from the shelter. And then the high school, 591 students. Smallest class is 4, and largest is 30. Average class size is 16.5. And we're looking at about 5 students from the shelter. There has been a request to get more information about class size by class, and I will have that information. I'll get that to you. That's going to take a little bit more time to put together.
Okay, I'm going to go right to left. April?
I just have a quick question. I appreciated that you have the enrollment for each school. Do you happen to know the capacity for students for each school? Like what the, maximum number of students
Yeah.
would be,
I
able
believe
to?
the high school is 650.
That's the capacity.
That
they're
was the
allowed to have
intended.
650
Well, that was the
students.
intended enrollment when it was built. I know at one time it was up about 950, so it was an overcrowded school.
Does that 650 include the portables?
Yes, that would include the portables. I think it's 600 without the portables. I don't know offhand the other 2 schools, but I can certainly get you that information.
Well, the elementary is,
Basically 1,020, I
yeah,
think.
1,020, yeah, is what it was built for.
Okay, so the middle school would be the only one that.
Right, I can get you that. I don't think that, I believe it's under that at this time, but I can get you that definite answer.
Thank you.
Jeff?
So with regard to the middle school, I must confess, I was quite surprised at those numbers. That seems like an extraordinary luxury to have those small classes for 5, 6, and 7. Did those numbers surprise you?
No, they did. Well, last year, when I applied for this job and I came for the visit and I walked through with Tracy, I did say to her, I've noticed your class sizes are small, and she said, yes, that's something that we have been focusing on, that we want to keep our classes as small as possible in order to allow for more attention for students. So it didn't surprise me when I was looking at this, but certainly when I came last year, it was something I noticed.
What's the latest research with regard to class sizes and effectiveness of education?
Last research I looked at was it's most important in the primary grades, K to 3.
Right.
You want to keep them under 20 or under in those grades. And then 4th grade and up, you could go, they found, 24 or below is most effective.
That's, I haven't looked at it in a while, but that's consistent with what I've learned over the years as well.
Right.
Thank you.
Brennan?
One thing that struck out with me with these numbers, I can understand there being a drop between 8th grade and 9th grade because some kids might choose to go to Upper Cape and whatever, but I mean, almost 42 students between 10th grade and 11th grade. Do we know, is that just a, kind of anomaly of numbers? There was not that many kids born that year, or are we seeing the students leave Wareham schools somewhere between 10th and 11th grade, whether it be dropping out, transferring, or whatever? Do we know why?
We are seeing, a drop there, and for exactly what you said, many of them are choicing out to other school
What is it about
districts,
that?
going to Upper Cape. And so I did that survey last year to ask, families what some of the reasons, and so that is definitely, something that we've been looking at, and
That grade in particular, between 10th and 11th, I was wondering if there was something in particular,
Yeah,
some kind of benchmark that made them do it that year as opposed to their junior year, their freshman year, or whatever. Like, why such a drop then? Because, you can even see in 12th grade, the numbers go back up, so
Right.
we did something right there to
Yeah,
retain some students, but...
I'd have to go back and look to see what our grade 11 was like, in grade 8 and
Yeah.
and grade 6. And I don't have that information here, but it may have been a small class to begin with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and finally, there was an educational research request by Colleen Cunyo that has been included in your packet. Unfortunately, she was unable to attend tonight, but and we can certainly, she has indicated that she wants to do this project in the spring, so I think we can definitely postpone the vote. But just for your information, we have an educational research policy. If a staff member or anyone else for that matter would like to do research in the school on our staff or students, that it first needs to be submitted to me for my approval, and if I do approve the research, then it needs to go to school committee for final approval. I have approved for her to do this research, so it now goes to the next level, which is for your consideration, and I think it would be great if, I think it looks like a very interesting project, some information that I certainly, and I believe that you guys might be interested in, but I think it would be a good idea to invite her and allow her to speak to it and answer your questions. So we can do that.
So are we okay if we table this tonight? We'll wait till we have her here to ask
Yeah, I was
questions?
going to make a motion to table it because I actually had a lot I wanted to ask her about this, so can we table it, and can I make a motion to table it until she can make a presentation?
Absolutely.
You have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? 500.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Dr. DeAndrea. All right, April, we have, looks like 4 policies to vote on tonight. Do you want to take us through them?
Yep, we do, and I can, I talk fast, so we can get through them quick, so Kevin won't hate me. So if you look in your packet, we had 4 policies. Our policy subcommittee, policy review subcommittee met for the first time earlier this month. Thank you to Jamie for helping get everything situated for that. She's an angel, as we all know. So if you look in your packet, the first one that we reviewed was the superintendent evaluation. You'll see highlighted in yellow. The only changes to this policy were changing the month of October to the month of April and changing the word basis to the word consideration. Other than that, the review committee voted to accept as is with those 2 minor adjustments.
Joyce, question?
So the policy doesn't accurately describe the process that we go through. So in the middle there, it says something, the individual evaluations will be discussed in open session at a regular scheduled meeting. They'll be submitted to the chairperson who will then create a final report. And the final report will be read by the chairperson at the next regularly scheduled meeting. That isn't actually what happens.
Right.
Right, so.
Right,
Kind
the
of.
individual evaluations will be turned to the chair. The chair then synthesizes them, and then that can all be discussed at the,
The individual
meeting.
evaluations are
Aren't
not
discussed
discussed.
the week
I mean, we have the
before.
opportunity to
Right.
speak to them, but they're not discussed.
I didn't even realize that that was worded that way
Yeah, I
when we
didn't
were
either
going
till I
over
read
it.
Yeah, I missed that too, I
so
apologize.
this one will probably have to go back for resubmission, maybe? We'll
Yep,
just,
we can- we
you can
can-
work with
Sorry,
us.
I
so we
didn't-
Yep,
can-
nope, that's perfectly fine. We
I
can
thought about
definitely.
writing something up, like to suggest, but I just never got that far, so.
Nope, no, I'm just gonna ask Jamie, is that something that I need to go back to policy review to edit? Or is that something that we can vote to edit at this meeting?
You can always make changes above and beyond what you do at the subcommittee.
Okay, so we can adjust the wording here without having to have it go back to policy review. If we want to just utilize the terminology, if you'd rather me bring it back to policy review, I have no problem doing that. But if we have the capacity to just have it amended to fit our current practice,
I think we can.
Just take that sentence out,
right,
and it works.
The one about,
The one that individual will be discussed in open session. If you take that sentence out, then it just says the individual committee member evaluations will be submitted to the committee chairperson for review and synthesis.
okay,
Yes?
yes.
So do I have a motion to amend
Wait,
this?
can I just ask?
Yeah,
one
go
more
right
thing,
ahead.
though? I personally would like to also see something in there about the superintendent being able to receive the evaluation
Ahead of
before
time.
the meeting.
we can definitely bring it back or if we can
No, we can
change
just, I
that
mean,
sentence
we
or
can just
add that
that
sentence.
the superintendent, I mean, if everyone's in agreement, we could add that the final report prepared by the chair would be made available to the superintendent
Prior to the
day
meeting in
that- yeah.
open public or whatever.
at least 24 hours prior to the meeting.
48.
48, okay.
I have no problem with
Don't
48.
push
No,
it.
24, 24 is fine.
I turn in everything late. Can we please not push it?
So that would be my suggestion.
So we have an amendment or a motion, I guess, to take out the one sentence talking about the individual evaluations and adding a sentence saying that
The final report,
the final report will be made available to the superintendent 48 hours, at least 48 hours
Made available by the chair. at
48
least
hours
48
prior
hours prior to the meeting.
to the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion on that? Okay, all in favor of those changes?
Aye.
We'll get it to you. All in favor of those changes?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? 500.
Okay, thank you. So the next policy was the facilities stewardship policy. And that policy was more or less a cost of doing business upgrade. The prices of things that hadn't been reviewed. There was no change in it in 2017 when it was prior, and it hadn't been amended since 2013. So that's a 10-year gap where the amount was not adjusted. So the amount, $250, was upped to $1,000, and the amount listed as $1,000 was listed as $5,000. So the sentence reads, all construction or destruction projects to school facilities and grounds in excess of what was once $250, now $1,000, will require the approval of the superintendent or designee. Projects in excess of $5,000 will require approval of the school committee. And this is not for capital projects, as was needed to be reminded to the remainder of that policy review. This was for like replacing a door or blinds or things of that nature. It was more for day-to-day things that needed to be fixed as needed, as opposed to any sort of capital improvement.
Jeff?
Well, candidly, that going from 1,000 to 5,000 is far more than the inflation during that 10-year period. So, but my biggest problem is structural modifications. I don't consider replacing or repairing a door to be a problem. I consider structural modifications to be a big deal. And so that's why my reaction is maintenance and upkeep, no problem. I couldn't care less if you made it 10 grand. But if you're doing structural modifications, I have a problem with going from 1,000 to 5,000.
I don't think anywhere, oh, it does say structural modification.
What do you consider structural
It would be like a door
modifications?
frame. What, the way it was explained from the principals during, and from Matt during that meeting was like, if it was like a door frame, is it technically a structural modification?
I get it. I admit a bias because I hated the fact that we changed that beautiful window in the high school, which is the very first thing you see when you walk up to the high school, and we made it into an office. You know, an architect would cringe at what we did to that. It doesn't affect much on the outside, but if you're on the inside, now instead of seeing that beautiful window, you see an office wall. So I'm not thrilled with structural modifications that we don't have some say-so. Whether you could have, I don't know. I don't want to be petty about this, but I could live with 2,000 instead of 5,000 if the rest of the committee doesn't feel strongly about 5,000. If the rest of the committee feels strongly about 5,000, I will shut up again.
Do you,
I'm sorry,
Well, no,
Joyce?
my question was, I don't remember ever being asked to approve a project like this. Am I just forgetting? Because we all know I forget. But I don't even remember being asked to approve any project, even in excess of $1,000. So my question was gonna be what?
well, I
what
think there was a
project?
history that something happened at the high school once, and either a wall was put up or taken down. This was years ago. I don't know the exact, but I remember it. I remember someone on the school committee talking about it at the time, saying, whoa, where'd this come from? We didn't have any say in this. It's changed the building. And that's where I think this
Is it possible to strike structural modifications and keep the numbers the same?
that's what I was going to suggest.
If you're comfortable with that, then I'm fine with the changing the numbers.
So just removing the word structural modification.
Maintenance and upkeep.
It's an upkeep.
But my question, okay, so my question isn't actually about the dollar amounts. It's more about like $1,000 really isn't a lot of money when you're doing any type
And
of
I'm
project,
perfectly
right?
fine with 5,000.
No, but I'm just saying, so there have to have been projects that fell into that category. So my question was more like, who decides? Like, who would bring that in front of us? Would that be you, or would that be a principal? Okay.
Me or the principals, or, yeah.
So that just means previously things may not have been brought to our attention, but we have new administration who is agreeing to bring it to our attention, so we don't have to worry about it anymore.
So I'll make an amendment that the first sentence reads, "The maintenance and upkeep of all school department facilities, et cetera, but leave the 1,000 and 5,000 in."
Thank you.
So you don't want them to come to us with structural modifications?
Oh. No, they can't, they have to,
all structural modifications should come before the school committee, is what you're saying?
yes.
Oh,
Right,
sorry, I didn't hear that.
right.
Sorry, okay.
That,
I think that's a given.
right, it absolutely
We don't need a
is.
policy about that because they can't spend it,
If we take the wording out.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we have that, we vote on the motion first to take out structural modifications, correct?
Or would you rather, sorry to make,
That's good.
at the end of that paragraph, say, it removes the wording in that sentence, but add at the end of it another sentence that says, any structural modifications will require approval by the school committee. That way
Done.
it's
So-
in there.
Yes,
So-
that was gonna be my next thing.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Got that, Jamie? All in favor of that
as
change?
amended.
As amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 500.
Okay, so the next policy, thank you, is the special education transportation policy. This was just two wording, bless you, just two wording adjustments made. Transportation manager was updated to the current title of transportation coordinator. And the term for individualized educational plan, the word is now program, is the way that it's being offered through the district. So those two changes were made just to bring the language current to what we currently are using.
Motion to accept? So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed, abstained, 500.
Okay, and the last policy which
Not least.
the not least, this was the most hot button. It's a
Yep.
one-sentence policy that has been in place since 1992 with no change, and this was the only one we did not have a unanimous vote on.
Also had the most discussion
It
on
had
it.
the most discussion. I thought it was going to be the fastest meeting I've ever held, and I was sorely mistaken. So this is our distribution of condoms policy. So Wareham Public Schools, since 1992, when this was adopted, does not in any way allow for distribution of birth control. However, we were informed that there are ways that can be connected with outside resources like Planned Parenthood. There are reps that do come to educate the students on a fairly regular basis, and if necessary, a student in need could be able to meet with someone through that kind of organization outside of Wareham Public Schools, and so there is an opportunity, which was what one of the parents' concerns was them not having access should they require access. Mr. Palladino did make sure to let us know that Wareham Public Schools has a history of having a very low teen pregnancy rate, and especially in very recent years, it hasn't been anything of an issue. And him having been with the district probably since 1992, yeah, there wasn't any problem that was noted at the high school or brought to the Policy Review Committee's attention during that time.
Jeff?
So prophylactic actually is a perfectly good adjective that can be applied to many things. Therefore, it does seem to me that we really should say allow prophylactic distribution of condoms, because that's what the title of this policy is. You know, we may only think about condoms when we think about, use the term prophylactic, but it's in fact a perfectly good adjective that could be used to describe many.
I think it was implied with the title of.
I understand, but since we're writing a policy that we're going to vote on, it does seem to me we ought to be more precise by saying, instead of period, of condoms.
So are you making a motion
Yes.
to amend?
Yes.
To add of condoms? Do we have a
Yes.
second to that motion?
To a policy that hasn't been amended since 1992. Let's leave.
Yes.
Make
Good job,
history.
Jeff.
I don't recall ever
I'll second
voting on
it.
this before.
All right,
but-
is that a second, Brennan?
Sure.
We have a second. So we have a second to amend, to add the word of condoms after distribution. Any discussion? All in favor? Say
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? 500. The amended policy passes.
And that is all I have for policy review.
Thanks, April. Any other business? Seeing none,
Could we get Bonnie back so Bonnie and I could finish our?
you can finish absolutely on your own time. That'd be great.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? 500. Meeting is adjourned.